Welcome back to App Stories. Today's episode is brought to you by Things. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know what? During the pre-show, we talked all about...
The fact that you are apprehensive, yes.
I am apprehensive about hardware. I'm apprehensive. I have a very first world problem of being uncertain about my order for the iPad Pro, and you made me feel a lot better about it. I was already kind of figuring that I had made the right call. I think that we've concluded that I have, but if you want to hear kind of the considerations that go into things like the screen size, the screen type, the connectivity, all that stuff, we talked about it in the pre-show, and you can get that by subscribing to App Stories Plus, which is the version of the show that comes out early, extended, and ad-free by going to appstories.plus. But you can also become a Club Mac Stories Premier member, and we throw in the App Stories Plus part as part of the package. Plus, you get all the bonus stuff you get by being a club member. And I'm not going to go through all that right now, but if you go to plus.club, you can see all the goodies and other benefits of being a club member, including App Stories Plus. So check it out.
Yeah. All right, so what are we talking about today, John?
We are talking about our iOS and iPadOS wish lists, because this is something that you and I have been doing now for quite a few years, going into WWDC, because it's a time to think about all the little things we've wanted out of the OSs, both new features and things that kind of need fixing. Last week we talked about the problems with iPadOS and how it's holding back the hardware. And so I think to an extent we've done iPadOS a little bit, but that was more focusing on the frustrations. And it's not all, wish lists aren't all about frustrations. They're about new things that we want too. So today we're going to focus on iOS and iPadOS 18 and what we'd like to see coming down the road in, I don't know, about 5 weeks from now.
Yeah. Do you want to start with iOS? Maybe?
I think we should. I think we should start right on the home screen. Let's do it.
Yeah. So the home screen, and it seems like this is actually happening in iOS 18. I just think it's time to finally be able to rearrange icons however we want, to have a free icon placement. I think it's fine if maybe Apple will keep the standard grid-based alignment the default. But I would imagine that the way I see it, for folks who really like to tweak and fine-tune their home screens, maybe the first time you go into wiggle mode, you get like a prompt or like a toggle that says, do you want to enable freeform arrangement of icons? And that's what's going to let you drag icons however you want. Maybe have like empty spots between icons. Maybe make some icons smaller, because why not? I mean, I could use, smaller icons. Maybe you will be able to put up to 5 icons in the dock or something like that. So more freedom in terms of icon and widget placement on the home screen. And while I'm on the topic of widgets, I really think it's time for iOS and iPadOS to get what the feature that is macOS only still, which is being able to resize a widget without having to delete the widget from your home screen and add in the different size. macOS lets you resize a widget that supports multiple sizes without having to do the whole dance of remove and add again. And the same should be true on iOS.
It's so strange to me that was added to macOS the very first year that it got widgets, but it never came to iOS or iPadOS. It's because, obviously the problem is if you have to delete that widget, not only are you having to then go back in and do all the tapping around and finding the widget again, but you also have to set it up if there are any settings for the widget. So it's definitely something that I think would be useful to have. And when you really think about it, I think we all kind of take this as the state of the world, but in a world where we have much larger phones than we did in 2007, why are we still filling up with icons from the top to the bottom? That's the thing about freeform. People want the icons, the apps that they use the most on the bottom for the most part, because they're easy to reach with your thumb. And having freeform lets you do that without having to also have an entire full screen of icons. I would add here, I actually do think I'd like to get rid of wiggle mode. I don't know what the mode is going to be, but wiggle mode is too hard to manage. It's very hard moving widgets from one screen to another without rearranging the other icons and widgets on the screen, especially when you're using some of the larger widgets. They tend, I think, to be more difficult to place or stack or whatever you're trying to do without moving things around in a way that you don't want them to. So I don't really know what this mode would be, but I'd like to see some sort of editing mode that doesn't involve wiggling and having to go through the frustration of moving things from screen to screen.
Yeah.
And the other thing I guess I would add to the home screen is I'd like to see some more size
Oh,
classes for
that's a good one.
widgets,
That's a good
right?
one.
Like 1 by 2 or 2 by 3, whatever it is. I can imagine situations where certain kinds of data would just look better and could be done with a more visual display on the home screen if you had more options for different size widgets.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with this one. That's a very good suggestion, especially like the 1 by 2. That would be an excellent one to have. I before we talk about, I mean, we got to do it, right? We got to talk about AI because it's
Sure.
uh, a person in real life asked me about AI on the phone today. I was like,
Oh
oh my
yeah.
god, yeah, it has. I am sorry to inform you, John. It has reached the normals.
Oh, it
So
has. My dad asked me all about it. He's
yeah,
like,
there
"Oh,
you
what's
go.
Apple?" He's like, "What's Apple going to do about AI?" I was like, "Oh God."
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So we got to do it. But before we do that, I want to mention. I really think something I want to see. I've been wanting to see for the past couple of years. Um, this was rumored, I think, 2 3 years ago. An official wallpaper API for developers to offer like official wallpaper packs that show up
Hmm.
in settings. There are so many wallpaper apps on the App Store, right? Some of them are so scammy. I don't even know where to begin. Go
Right.
check out Neil Leon for Mac Stories did a roundup a few months ago on legit and non-scammy wallpaper apps. So you should go check it out. We'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's a great story because it's really hard to find those legit ones. I mean, there's
It
a lot of
really
junk.
is a lot of junk, a lot of apps that actually steal work from different artists without their consent, which
Right.
sucks. Uh, and I think it's time for Apple to offer like an official API. Like I shouldn't have to pre-save a wallpaper to my Photos app alongside photos of my food and my dogs. And every once in a while there's a picture of a wallpaper. There should be a native wallpaper API on iOS that you open the wallpaper section and it's got just like you have a widget gallery, right, for your home screen and your lock screen
Yeah.
that includes Apple's widgets and third-party widgets. There should be a wallpaper gallery that includes Apple's wallpapers and third-party wallpapers.
Yeah, that'd be great. You've given me an idea, which is I would love to see a screenshot app on iOS too, just to get the screenshots out of my photo
yeah,
library. But that's a very specific thing to our profession that I don't think we'll ever see.
there is a screenshot app for macOS. I know, maybe some people don't know this, but like the ability to take screenshots on macOS is actually powered by the Screenshot app that you can find. I think it's application utilities or something. It's actually called just that, Screenshot, and it's actually quite nice.
This week's episode of App Stories is brought to you by the award-winning to-do app Things by Cultured Code, who has now brought the Things app to the Apple Vision Pro. The App Store for the Vision Pro is in its infancy, and many of the available apps are just iPad apps. But Cultured Code has gone the extra mile and made their app native for Vision OS. It's a fantastic app. I've been using it since day one, and I love Things on all platforms. But what I appreciate most about the Vision Pro version is that it just works the way you would expect on the Apple Vision Pro. That's because it's a native app that has a sidebar made of glass, menus and popovers that float above your lists, resizable windows, controls that light up and acknowledge your gaze, and a whole lot more. And of course, you can arrange your lists all around you. You can put your today list in the center, you can move your scheduled to-dos to the left, have some projects open on the right. No matter how you want to do it, you can rearrange your various lists and get a bird's eye view of everything that you're working on, which I really enjoy. As a native app, Things interface is made for your eyes, hands, and voice. You can pick up to-dos and drop them where they need to go, glance at the search field and start speaking to find what you're looking for, and you can swipe your to-dos for quick actions or dictate your notes. All of the interactions are smooth and effortless. If you're a Things user on the iPhone or iPad, you probably know that you can drag the plus button to insert a to-do anywhere. This feature is also available on the Vision Pro, and it feels really magical. Just grab that plus button with a pinch, make it float across the list with a wave of your hand, and then simply let go. Your new to-do lands right where you want it. Things is well known for providing fantastic keyboard support on the iPad, too, and the Vision Pro is no exception. Connect a wireless keyboard and you have all the same power. Simply start typing to navigate from list to list and take advantage of the app's many keyboard shortcuts. And of course, Things integrates with Things Cloud, so everything you do in the Apple Vision Pro syncs instantly to your Mac, iPad, iPhone, and watch. If you have an Apple Vision Pro, Things is one of those must-try apps. Simply go to the App Store and search for Things. You can also head on over to the website and learn more at things.app. You'll also find a free trial for your Mac there, so you can take it for a spin. Again, that URL is things.app. Whatever it is you want to accomplish in life, Things can help you get there. Try Things today at things.app. You won't regret it. Our thanks to Things for their support of the show.
All right, AI. We
Yes,
got to
here
do
we
it.
are.
We got to do it. So here's what I think. Obviously, Apple has been working on a large language model, and according to the rumors, they're going to offer a mix of sort of on-device large language model-based AI features, and they're gonna team up apparently with OpenAI itself for a chatbot functionality. It's not clear how. It appears, according to Mark Gurman, that there's going to be a local on-device component for the Apple's large language model, as well as Apple's own servers for the cloud-based processing of the Apple large language model.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be the third-party partnerships, right, with OpenAI and maybe even Google. So what I would like to see from Apple is a combination of new features and enhancements to Siri. And I have a few ideas. The first one that came to mind is summarization. And specifically, I would like to see summarization of text messages. Like sometimes I open messages and I'm, a group thread, and I see a badge that says, I don't know, 60. And it was like, oh, the guys have been
Right.
chatty today, right?
Right.
It would be nice if an AI could, maybe I long press the thread and it says summarize before I open it, and the AI tells me, hey, Mike and Stephen and John have been, sharing memes about, I don't know, something. And it's like, okay, I get it, what they've been up to. But also summarize my notifications. Apple tried this before without AI, right? They have the scheduled delivery for
Right.
the notification summary on iOS and iPadOS. Now imagine if that notification summary was actually powered by an AI that could summarize your notifications, understand which ones are more important to you, maybe even proactively offer to mute notifications that you don't care about, but just in general, a way for an AI to look at my notifications and be like, hey, here's what you should know, and here's why I think it's important, and here's what I think it's not. I think that would be a really nice feature to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, when I think about this stuff, I'm least interested in the chatbot type stuff. That's fine. I
I
don't
have a few
mind.
thoughts about that. Okay, we'll
All
get to
right.
that. We'll get to that.
All right. Yeah, let's put that aside for a moment. I do think that your idea, though, of summarization is an important one. That's one where I think Apple can do something that's unique because of the access to the data that's already on your phone. And I'd like to see this done in a way that, one, doesn't do it for me unless I ask for it. Like you said, maybe a long press on a thread and ask for a summary. I don't want this stuff very often done just for me, but I'd also like to have it draw from every corner of my iPhone. And one of the things that I thought about was, how about that Today view that, you swipe to the right and you've got that Today view full of widgets. I've been trying to find a good replacement for the Today view for years now, if people remember back to my wishes in the past. And this is a place where I think you could just have a full iPhone screen summary of everything that's going on. And I think of it in two ways. I think of it at the beginning of my day when I get up in the morning and have I'd love to have a summary of, here are the messages you got overnight from people in Europe. Here are the things on your calendar today. Here are the things in your task manager, the top things in your task manager that you need to get done, and do it in an intelligent way that is based on what's important to me by my pattern of activity and what I've interacted with in the past. And then I'd like to have something that's very similar to that beginning of the day thing, but at the end of my day. Tell me all the links that I saved in Sofa and in Reader and everywhere else so that I know, oh, it looks like you were interested in watching this show tonight, or
Mm.
here are three things that look like you want to read them, or here's something that you put in your task list to buy and you haven't done yet. Here's the link to it in Amazon, whatever it happens to be, and proactively go out there and create that summary for me. Now, I think that's a lot harder to do in a way that's useful than people imagine. But that I think AI is the kind of thing that the kind of tool that makes those sort of things possible, if not this year, soon.
Yeah, that has always been the dream, right? If you recall when Apple rolled out shortcuts as an iOS feature, some of the most popular shortcuts immediately became like the morning routine
Right.
shortcuts. Like everybody was making a morning routine shortcut to use shortcuts to tell them like here's everything that's going on in your day. And that's a very rudimentary type of shortcut that it's basically collecting data manually from a bunch of different sources and assembling that data in like a notification or something. Now imagine if there was actually like an AI that could, and this is the great potential for Apple doing AI, right? Apple has access to my data on my phone, which is my most important computer. OpenAI with ChatGPT, they don't have access to my
Right.
phone, which is my the most arguably the most important device in my life, right? And that's why I'm actually pretty excited about Apple doing even to an extent like local on-device AI. That's going to be incredibly interesting to see.
I agree. I think that it's very important though that it also apply to third-party apps and not just
Yes.
Apple apps.
Oh, I really hope there's a third party story here. Like here's how you can provide data to Siri AI or whatever it's gonna end up being called. Like
Right.
a way for developers to mark up data from their apps. And basically, developers have long been able to offer like suggestions or donations as iOS call them to the system. And
Yep.
I hope that developers can now donate, data to the large language model to say, I'm the developer of, I don't know, drafts, and here's what you should know about the data contained in my app about this user. I hope that's the case. For text, I also want to mention obviously text analysis. Like large language models are great at not just summarizing, but also finding typos, rewording sentences, just doing general text analysis. Now, imagine if all these features that typically are like there's Grammarly, there's built-in grammar and syntax checking in apps like AI Writer. Now, imagine if all these features came just built in with TextKit on iOS. Like,
Yeah, it'd be
imagine if
great.
that'd be great. I have two more ideas.
Okay.
Actually, three. One of them I mentioned before. Let me create shortcuts with natural language. I think this is pretty much a given. I think shortcuts will play a role in this new AI features. I would be very surprised if Apple doesn't leverage the large language model to simplify shortcuts creation. I've mentioned this feature before. I think it's gonna happen. I think it should happen.
Do you think
Um,
though that the Shortcuts app itself, the visual way that you build shortcuts, do you think that'll suffer if Apple's focuses on doing this with natural language?
I think I think there could be like a simplified mode and an expert mode, and I wouldn't be
Mhm.
surprised if the traditional shortcuts or automator UI becomes the expert mode.
Yeah,
Yeah,
makes
we'll see.
sense.
There's two more ideas I want to mention about Siri. So on chatbots, I think what I would like to see is a way to converse with Siri. Um, via text and use it as a sort of natural language log of my life. Like right now, if I want to remember something, I gotta put it in reminders or I gotta put
Right.
it in notes. But like it's not like I can talk to those apps, right? And I think one of the great advantages of chatbots based on LLMs is the idea that you can save something, a sentence, right, with context, and the large language model will remember it. Like,
Hmm.
and so the idea of archiving my memory, let's think about it this way: archiving my memories in Siri, so that Siri knows about me and can correlate those memories that I save with apps on my phone, with data on my phone. Like, I think there's so much potential there to sort of offload part of your brain to Siri, because now Siri understands what you're typing thanks to the large language model beneath. I think there's a
That's a really interesting approach, and it's a little bit like what I was talking about, but from taking a different approach to it, which is using Siri as the way into that log of what's going on in your life, and having context through what happened in the past.
Right. And I'm not imagining this, right? Because I mean, today you can chat with ChatGPT and say, "Hey, I'm a 35-year-old guy from Italy. I like pasta. I have two dogs.
Right.
Give me some hotel recommendations in Barcelona." And the large language model will understand, okay, this is a 35-year-old, has two dogs, loves pasta, so he needs to find a hotel that is pet friendly. Like, you can provide context to the
Yep.
large language model, and it'll react accordingly. So it's not science fiction, not anymore. My second idea, which is also a theory that I have, is I call it Siri camera. So I think Apple should prepare their response to Google Lens with a specific mode of the iPhone's camera that you can use to point the camera at something and have real-time information about what you're looking at. So imagine the multimodal AI that you have with the Ray-Ban Meta glasses.
Hmm.
Imagine these AI devices with the camera, right? Like the AI Pin or the Rabbit R1, but actually done well. The iPhone's built-in intelligence already knows how to recognize food, pets, objects, landscapes in your photos. Now,
Yep.
imagine if the system could do this in real time, um, just when you're pointing the camera. Text recognition, real time translation. Right? Maybe you're visiting a foreign city, you're a tourist, and you're pointing the iPhone's camera at a sign or at a menu in a restaurant, and you're getting a real time translation in the camera. I think there's great potential here for Apple to sort of respond to what Google is doing with Google Lens and Gemini on Android phones. And my big brain theory, John, is that this is the reason why it's rumored that the next iPhones will have a dedicated camera button on the side, because
Oh,
Apple wants
yeah.
you. Well, because people were like, well, but why would you want to have a physical button just for the camera when you can always long press on the lock screen? Like, it's always been so easy to access the camera. But what if Apple wants you to quickly access the camera because they want to sell you the iPhone as the best AI camera that's
Right.
around?
Right,
That's
right.
my
Yeah,
theory.
that's a great theory. I think that's really that really could be why you would want that. I can totally see that.
All right. Do you have anything else about AI, or can we move on before
I
we
do
jump?
not. Let's move into,
Okay.
I think we've got somewhat of a grab bag for the rest of this
Yes.
for iOS.
Yeah. So I continue to think that I would love to have split view on iOS.
Yes. I don't think you're ever going to get it, but you can
Nope.
wish for it.
I'm always gonna wish for it. More background utilities, right?
Right.
That is something that I wrote about this in the context of iPadOS. I really want to have it on yeah, on the iPhone too, just being able to run more stuff in the background.
Yeah, there's one very simple, I guess, example of this that brings it home for me, which is there are various text editors that you can use that will save markdown files to the iPhone or iPad's file system. And then you can also access those same markdown files with other apps. For instance, Obsidian versus versus Bear or whatever it happens to be. And the problem is when you input some text into one of those apps, the other app won't get that data until it's opened and syncs
Yeah.
up with wherever you save it. And so what I'd like is some sort of API that when I take, for instance, Bear and save some text to a markdown file that is part of my Obsidian vault, that there is some sort of message sent by that file system to all the apps that can access it to tell them that it's been updated, and they sync in the background.
Yeah, yeah. I want to see finally. I want to see trim silence or smart speed in the Apple Podcast app.
Yeah,
I've
definitely.
been wishing for this one forever. Any updates to shortcuts would work. I mean, besides
Yes.
AI, right? I don't even know where to begin. I guess refer to my previous 2, 3 iOS reviews. Shortcuts has basically been stale for the past couple of years, if not
It
three
really
years.
has.
Really, there's so much I could wish for. We have done an entire episode of app stories. We also have a back catalog of those. So yeah,
It's hard to both wish for new features and to also realize that there's a lot of stability and performance things that
yeah,
need to be fixed as well.
yeah. Power user tools, debugging tools, more third-party integrations. Like
Right.
I don't- just yeah. And I have two more. I would love to see third-party controls in Control Center. Because I'm still so surprised that it's locked to Apple's controls only. Just let me toggle stuff from third party. Like, let me quickly toggle a Philips Hue scene from Control Center. Like, I just wish that I could customize that screen with
Right.
toggles from my favorite apps. And lastly, this is another one that I mention every year. I would love to have an official standalone passwords app.
Yeah, I think that would be a really great addition. I have just a few additional things to raise too. One is
Mm.
the share sheet just needs to be rethought from the ground up. It's not really changed in any meaningful ways since it was introduced. And so many apps take advantage of it that if you have a lot of apps installed, it's just hard to manage all those action extensions and share extensions, and it's hard to get to them. It's hard to find them. The monochrome of the action extensions makes it hard to tell one from the other. You've got shortcuts integration in there alongside all the functionality from third-party apps. It's just too much, and I think
Mhm.
it needs to be rethought in terms of how it's organized and where that stuff shows up. I love the share sheet, but I really think it's also one of those features that I feel like its time has come for a rethink, because it's one of the things that breaks every time we go into beta season, is that there's something wrong with the share sheet. And I feel like it's just, I don't know, it's got too many dependencies or something. Something's going on there that needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
Then I feel like the home app has come a long way in recent years. I still feel like there are ways that the home app could be better. I think it needs better integration with the shortcuts app itself in terms of the actions that are available. I still think that we're getting to a point where presence sensing would take the home app a lot further than it is today. For instance, maybe my phone can tell that I'm in my bedroom, and so I can optionally have it so that it floats my bedroom bedside light to the top of the list. That kind of thing would be really nice to have. It's the kind of thing that could be integrated nicely with AI, I think, too. And then finally, on the automation front, I feel like personal automations really have not gotten the attention that they deserve since they were first introduced.
Mm.
When we get to our Mac wish list, this is a bigger deal on the Mac where you don't have them at all. But even on the iPhone and the iPad, I feel like there ought to be more triggers available, and you ought to be able to nest or combine various triggers to say, I don't know, that my iPad is plugged in and charging and I'm at home. That kind of thing, where it's like
Yeah.
multiple conditions that trigger some sort of automation.
Yeah. Yeah. And third party triggers.
That
Yeah.
too, yes.
All right. Shall we move on to iPadOS? I mean,
Yes.
I think this is a for me at least. I would love to hear from you. Basically, what I would love to see is what I wrote in my story about
Yes.
iPadOS. I would love to hear if there's anything else that you wanted to add to what I wrote about regarding files, multitasking, all kinds of things that I had in the story. Like, I would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think you did hit the lion's share of what I would like to see. And we've also talked about a lot of things in the context of iOS that translates directly to iPadOS as well. I think one of the apps though that I would like to see added to iPadOS is a dictionary app. I
Mm,
actually use the dictionary app on macOS a lot. I use it probably most for the thesaurus, although I also use it for the
yes.
dictionary as well, and it's just really good. It's a lightweight, quick, easy thing to do. It's easy to kind of go in there, go into the thesaurus and then double click on a word and then it'll take you to the definition. It's just really well done and really lightweight. And there aren't a lot of great dictionary apps on iOS or iPadOS that aren't, like full of ads and that sort of thing. I've used Terminology by Greg Pierce, which is quite good too, and based on, I think, open source dictionaries. But I'd like to see Apple try their hand, and maybe this could be built in combination with what you talked about when we were talking about iOS and the AI features, is a way to both have the dictionary available, but also to give you suggestions in terms of like grammar correction or spell correction, that sort of thing, which would be
Yeah.
really, really nice.
Yeah, imagine a dictionary app, sort of in the same style of iBooks, with the serif font and everything, like with the New
Right,
York font. Like, that would be extra nice on
right.
the iPad. Let's see if there's anything else that I can mention here. The In my story, I wrote about the clamshell mode.
Yep.
um this is something that, like, I still cannot believe that it's not possible, in terms of, you need, like, I was just using my iPad Pro with my new external monitor this week, and it seems so unreal that you're forced to see the iPadOS UI and the external monitor at the same time. And, like, I get it, like, Apple wants you to use the Magic Keyboard, but the iPad is fully compatible with external peripherals. Like, you can pair a Magic Keyboard, any Bluetooth keyboard or mouse and trackpad, and keep using your iPad like that. And it just seems, it even feels like a waste of battery and power, like, from that
Right.
perspective, like, to be forced to see the screen all the time. um the dream is for iPadOS 18 to finally address this, right? But I feel like we've been down this road before.
We have. And the thing that to me is very interesting about this particular issue is that there's like a Mac analog here, which is, and I know Jason Snell has talked about this before in the past, is that if you're using a MacBook Air and you've got your AirPods in and you're listening to music paired to your Mac and you close your Mac, the music stops. That doesn't happen with the iPad. And so, in one respect,
Oh, that's a good
Apple,
one.
right? The iPad does have a clamshell mode in the sense that you can continue to enjoy whatever audio you're listening to. However, you're right, you can't do the same thing and continue to enjoy whatever video, whether it's just the an app or actual video on an external monitor. And it doesn't make sense to me. It's like all these little things that are slightly different between Mac OS and iPad OS in places where it doesn't make sense. I mean, there are places where it makes a lot of sense for the iPad to be different than the Mac, but there are a lot of places where it doesn't too. And Apple's addressed a lot of those over the years, but there are also these kinds of things that are frustrating if you're an iPad user and you see a Mac user just able to close up their Mac, put it in one of those nice little stands and use their external monitor when they're sitting at a desk, but then take it with them and use the built-in screen when they're away from that desk. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of weird.
For iPadOS, let's see. I mean, we talked about this last week on App Stories. I published the article. Once again, stage manager improvements. I linked today an excellent story by Steve Trunton Smith on sort of more the developer angle on iPadOS, and why, for example, it's kind of absurd that Stage Manager doesn't have any developer integration whatsoever. Like, developers have no idea if their apps and their apps windows are being used in Stage Manager or not, which is an incredible an incredible limitation, something that has never ever been the case on macOS. What else? Files, obviously, and not just the Files app, but just more file system features. Like I shouldn't have to fall back to a Mac to a Mac if I want to format an external drive. Like I can use an external drive with my iPad, but if I want to format it because I bought it and it came in a
Right.
format that is not compatible with the iPad, I need to have a Mac. Like because the iPad cannot format the drive on its own. And lastly, I just want I hope that the story we get at WWDC is a story of that it's not the kind of event where Apple goes all in on AI on the iPhone and we basically don't hear anything about iPadOS. Because I'm concerned that Apple is going to do AI just on the phone, just on
Right.
iOS, that maybe the Mac and iPad will follow later, and maybe there will be a minor WatchOS update, a medium to large Vision OS update, because I feel like on that front, Apple wants to keep going. They feel
Yep.
like they need to keep iterating, and maybe they'll go once again. Hey, maybe iPad will wait until next year, and we'll give you a couple more fixes, and that's it.
That's where the iPad is a lot of the times these days,
Mm,
which is unfortunate. And that, I think it all comes down to a little bit about what you were talking about in your story, which is this siloing of workflows in iPadOS, which is really, to me, which is also a problem on Vision Pro for that matter, because it's based on iPadOS. But
yeah,
one of the problems is, and I know Joanna Stern talked to, I think it was Bob Borges of
yeah.
Apple about the iPad and the Mac, and the answer she got about the differences and that sort of thing was very close to, well, you should use both. I know that that's maybe going a little further than what he was trying to say, but there is this notion where if you get to a point in the iPad where you just can't do what you want to do, you're kind of forced to also get a Mac or find a Mac. It's like the thing you were talking about with formatting a drive.
Hmm.
Most people don't have to format an external drive if they use an iPad. But let's say that's where you started and you're like, oh, I love this iPad. I want this to be my main computer. And you kind of progress in your use of the iPad over the years. And you get to the point where you're like, oh, you know what? I'm totally into photography now. I've got this fancy camera and I want to have all these images from this external drive and bring them over into my iPad. And now I don't have any way to format this drive unless I find one that's pre-formatted for the iPad. And that's, to me, that's just wrong. That what that is doing is it's forcing the iPad to be kind of like the baby computer when at the same time Apple is trying to also sell it as the pro computer.
Yeah, yeah. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope we'll obviously actually see meaningful improvements in iPadOS and not just a focus on Vision OS and iOS because of
Yeah.
AI. We'll see. There's what, 3 weeks to go, a month to go, or something,
More like a
and
month, but yeah,
we obviously have other wishes to share in the next few
lots of
episodes of
wishes.
App Stories. Lots of wishes. Mac OS, tvOS, because why not Vision OS? We'll do a fun episode about that. So stay tuned. We're gonna do more. And yeah, for more context, especially on the iPadOS part, I recommend reading the article that I published last week.
Yes, I will have a link to that as well as all the other stuff that we've been publishing recently that's relevant to this in the show notes. So check that out. And I'd like to thank this week's sponsor, Things. You can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. We are on Mastodon. Just go to vitici.macstories.net and johnvorhees.macstories.net to follow us there. And we're on Threads and Instagram. Federico is at Vitici. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.